Is everybody ready? This is the 2-minute warning.
Checking, I see all commissioners except for Commissioner Bob, but I'm just looking at my whole list here. So Chair Hart, we still have a quorum, but I do not see Commissioner Bob yet.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Yes, Chair Hart, we do have a quorum. Participating in the meeting today is yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, and Commissioners Rouse and Conklin. Commissioner Bob will be joining us momentarily.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Emergency Management Specialist Richard David. Mr. David.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The American Lung Association designate May as Clean Air Month. Of course, taking transit can help outdoor air quality. For the indoors, it's important to ensure that your environment is safe from hazardous particles, metals, or gases. Identifying and eliminating sources of lead in your home or workplace, ensuring not to disturb asbestos, and controlling moisture and mold are key safety steps. At home, make sure to install carbon monoxide detectors and take action if they alert you to a hazard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the April 9th, 2024 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the April 9th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Conklin has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is 5-0. The motion to approve the minutes as presented passes.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Next on our agenda, we provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provide an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, there are no names in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to ensure that Metro upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metro Rail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work relating to Metro Rail's train operator certification. I thank the WMSC staff for this effective oversight work and thank Metro Rail for its efforts since our order to take steps towards complying with its safety requirements that it has developed to provide for the safety of Metro Rail riders and workers. Later in this meeting, we will discuss updates on other oversight activities, including those related to audits, inspections, investigations, and oversight of Metro Rail's safety certification. We also will review and discuss the proposed WMSC fiscal year 2025 work plan and budget. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. I have updates on several areas of our ongoing work. Metro Rail is making progress under our order to address its non-compliance with its train operator certification requirements. We reviewed and provided feedback on Metro Rail's initial submission in response to our order. This led Metro Rail to identifying 389 additional train operators requiring certification beyond the 71 that Metro Rail had previously identified. This captures operators whose records did not demonstrate that they could complete safety tasks within required timeframes. We are continuing to communicate with Metro Rail regarding its work and the timeline for completing these certifications. Metro Rail is also working on items related to the corrective action plans that will introduce longer-term mitigations. Mr. O'Donnell will discuss the CAP process later in this meeting. Regarding our audit of fitness for duty and occupational health, Metro Rail requested, and the WMSC granted, an extension of time to provide documents required under the subpoena that we issued on April 8th, after Metro Rail refused to provide documents necessary for the WMSC to conduct its safety oversight work. Prior to serving the subpoena, the WMSC made repeated attempts, including conversations I had with Metro Rail senior leadership, to receive the documents relevant to our fitness for duty and occupational health audit. Metro Rail's document production deadline is May 31st, and in the interim, the WMSC requested that Metro Rail provide its written objections, if any, by May 6th. We received this document on May 6th and are reviewing it. After we served the subpoena, Metro Rail escalated its lack of cooperation related to worker safety by stating that other written products, even meetings, that are implicated by the subpoena requests. For example, Metro Rail stated it was pausing discussions with the WMSC on a corrective action plan that had been progressing through the CAP development process. As a result of Metro Rail's actions, the WMSC is prevented from knowing or assessing the safety mitigations, if any, that Metro Rail is formulating for identified safety hazards. Metro Rail also raised questions about the scope of the WMSC's authority in nearly every offering of its written comments to draft audits and documents submitted to the WMSC in April and May. It's chosen to share its written objections to the subpoena and its comments to the latest WMSC draft program standard with some of our governmental partners. Nonetheless, the WMSC compact and federal regulations are clear about our safety oversight authority, and the WMSC will continue its work to get the documents and data needed to carry out our responsibility to oversee the safety of Metro Rail riders, workers, and first responders. Since the last public meeting, Metro Rail has progressed its 7000 series wheelset replacement program engineering test plan. The WMSC observed the hands-on activities that examined sampled wheelsets and axles that had been used in service for at least 20,000 miles. This examination is part of an engineering test plan we ensured that Metro Rail created as part of its return to service plan and associated wheelset replacement program. The WMSC observed dye penetrant and MagnaFlux magnetic crack inspection activities at the Brentwood rail yard. Based on this engineering test report, Metrorail expects to move those rail cars that have now had wheel set assemblies that are in line with industry norms for interference, fit, and press tonnage to a 60-day cycle for back-to-back and journal-bearing gap inspections. This means that those wheel sets will only have these measurements taken as part of the regular periodic inspections and will no longer require additional inspections at Metrorail's current 30-day interval. Rail cars that have not yet had wheel sets replaced will continue to be inspected every 30 days as a mitigation. Those inspections continue to identify non-compliant wheel sets, allowing Metrorail to remove those wheel sets from service. As an example of other field activities, a WMSC team observed Metrorail's emergency exercise on April 27th at Benning Road Station. The WMSC team observed and communicated concerns related to the initial roadway job safety briefing process for the personnel who set up the working limits. We're continuing to follow up. Other elements of the exercise were effective, including radio, ventilation fan, and rescue scenarios. Among our other recent activities, Mr. Paul Smith will update you later in the meeting on our oversight of Metrorail safety certification. This includes our selecting Metrorail's consideration for increases to its operating speed for in-depth review. This relates directly to Metrorail's automatic train operation project. We continue to oversee Metrorail safety certification of automatic door operation and automatic train operation, including observations last week of pilot training classes. On the program standard, we received Metrorail's comments last month on our annual revision, and we are carefully considering each one, as we have for each program standard revision. In accordance with our process, once we have determined what adjustments, if any, are needed for the draft, it will be presented to you at a future public meeting. As you mentioned, Chair Hart, we will present the proposed WMSC fiscal year 2025 budget and work plan later in this meeting. I'm proud of the WMSC's team, the teamwork over the last 5 years since our certification to demonstrate that we are a leading state safety oversight agency. This budget and work plan allows us to continue that growth and improvement. Mr. Angie will provide more details later in the meeting. Last week, the FTA conducted the on-site portion of its triennial audit of the WMSC, occurring, of course, on a 3-year cycle, and it relates to our compliance with 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 674, the Safety Oversight Regulation. We appreciate the opportunity to provide insight and evidence on our safety oversight program to the audit team. So this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
Mr. Meyer, can you elaborate a little bit on your statement about Metrorail escalated its lack of cooperation? You know, how did they do that, and what was that in relation to?
Primarily that
after the subpoena was issued, right?
Yes, that's correct. We've had several CAPs underway for some time and have been developing or overseeing Metrorail's development of CAPs in response to CAPs that arose from, or findings that arose from our train control, from our automatic train control audit. And Metro indicated to us in written communication that it would cease communicating to us on some of those CAPs.
So they basically have a list of things they won't talk to us about anymore because of this subpoena. Is that correct?
They've certainly indicated to us that they will stop communication on certain items.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you for that question. Are there any other questions from commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits, with an update from Mr. John O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you, Chair Hart. We are currently scheduled to be conducting our planned audit of Metrorail's fitness for duty and occupational health programs. However, as mentioned, we have not yet received the majority of the documentation necessary to conduct this audit. As Dr. Meyer detailed earlier, the WMSC issued a subpoena last month for the audit materials that Metrorail has not yet provided. Metrorail submitted written objections to the subpoena on May 6th and provided 4 additional documents. The rolling production of documents may continue through May 31st. Additionally, the audit team reported during the April meeting that Metrorail unilaterally canceled planned follow-up meetings on the lead hazard and other occupational safety and health issues, and removed the lead hazard and related safety issues from discussion from other meeting agendas. Metrorail is continuing to attempt to restrict sharing of information related to its safety risk mitigation, safety assurance, and processes to address these hazards. Moving on to our other audit updates. On April 1st, we transmitted the draft report of our audit of Metrorail's revenue vehicles or railcar program to Metrorail for review. This is part of our ongoing second triennial cycle of audits. Metrorail provided comments on May 1st. As with each audit report, we are carefully reviewing each of Metrorail's comments. When we have completed that review and made any adjustments if necessary, we will then issue our final report. The WMSC is also currently finalizing the draft report for our roadway worker protection program audit. After that is complete, we will transmit the draft report to Metrorail for its 30-day review period. We are in the planning stages for our emergency management and fire life safety programs audit. This audit will include such items as emergency preparedness and response, egress, and tunnel lighting. We are scheduled to send our initial document requests to Metrorail in the coming weeks. We expect interviews and on-site activities to then be scheduled beginning in July. Each audit that we conduct draws on items identified in safety event investigations, inspections, and other oversight activities. These audits cover all aspects of Metrorail's public transportation agency safety plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. We take steps to ensure Metrorail personnel feel free to speak openly and transparently with us during each interaction, as this leads to the greatest opportunity for accurate and meaningful recognition of positive practices or areas for improvement. During each audit, we communicate safety issues identified during on-site activity directly to Metrorail personnel. That completes this presentation on audits.
Chair Hart, Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Yes, thank you. Please, Commissioner Conklin.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. O'Donnell, I was curious if you could kind of describe what the fitness for duty area of activity is and kind of its implications for the safety of the rail system.
I mean, fitness for duty covers a few different areas. We're looking at, hours of service. Drug and alcohol is part of that. There's other aspects of preparedness, reasonable suspicion training, making sure that people are able to conduct the tasks that they are assigned on a daily basis especially for those people in safety sensitive roles.
And I would add that fundamental to fitness for duty is medical fitness for duty. The regular completion of medical examinations in accordance with standards and the management of health conditions that might contraindicate operating trains.
So it seems reasonable to conclude that work to make sure that Metrorail is adequately following their own procedures or any other applicable regulations is important to ensure that the people operating the system are capable of fulfilling the duties they need to. It's a little bit surprising that they would sort of hamper the ability to understand what measures are in place to keep the safety at the level it needs to be.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell? All right, hearing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans with an update from Ms. Ashley Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes?
Chair Hart, unfortunately, Ms. Rhodes is out today, so I will be covering her portion, but thank you for that. So going to the corrective action plan portion, since the last public meeting, we have closed 7 caps. Metro currently has 90 open caps that is in the process of implementing. We've approved 7 of Metrorail's 10 cap proposals for implementation to address the automatic train control and signals audit report that was issued earlier this year. Metrorail is still required to develop revisions to proposed plans for the remaining 3 caps related to the ATC audit. And on April 30th, we provided the most recent feedback for 2 of these caps. Revised cap proposals are due this week from Metrorail. Metrorail said it would refuse to meet its regulatory requirements regarding the other cap, C0255. Metrorail stated that it was not submitting a revised draft until the subpoena issued for the forthcoming fitness for duty and occupational health program audits was resolved. This draft cap from the completed ATC audit concerns identifying and mitigating health hazards observed in train control rooms, such as damaged and dislodged materials marked as containing asbestos. The WMSC remains available to discuss this cap or review the latest draft and expects Metrorail to identify and mitigate hazards as required by its agency safety plan. Moving on to the NTSB related caps, Metrorail has made progress on its corrective action plan development as required by our January 17th order to address NTSB safety recommendation R2328. The WMSC provided additional feedback on those 4 cap proposals on May 3rd. Metrorail's revised proposals are due this Friday. These corrective action plans lay out the specific steps Metrorail will take and the timelines it will need to complete these steps in order to begin identifying safety critical items and then to develop and implement trend analysis processes to monitor these safety critical items. These caps also include processes to assess whether new items are safety critical. Moving to the train operator certification order caps, Metrorail provided revised corrective action plans on April 29th to address the 2 findings in our order issued in February. The WMSC provided feedback last week, and Metrorail's revised proposals are due next week. The cap development, implementation, and closure process is specified in our program standard. For cap proposals, the program standard sets out these timelines for which Metrorail's initial development and the WMSC's review of that proposal and determination of whether to approve the cap or offer feedback to drive the necessary change. If revisions are required, the program standard specifies the timelines for those revisions and reviews so that Metrorail and the WMSC have the opportunity to effectively evaluate and, if necessary, improve the corrective action plans. After Metrorail submits acceptable cap proposals that will address the identified safety deficiency and receives the WMSC's approval, Metrorail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule set forth in the cap. Metrorail submits records for each actionable item in each cap after each step is completed. Metrorail's implementation of each of these caps improves the safety of the system for the riders and the workers. Each cap includes discrete deliverables, the steps necessary and identified to correct the safety issue, and the specific deadline when each step will be completed. Each deliverable encompasses specific action or verification showing progress in improving safety. When the WMSC's review of deliverables or the WMSC's verification inspections determine that additional information or action is required, the WMSC follows up with Metrorail. This may include requiring additional support information, declining a Metrorail request for closure, requiring a subsequent submittal, or holding meetings to determine other productive path forward for Metrorail to effectively implement the safety improvements. The WMSC conducts these reviews of Metrorail submissions on an ongoing basis. Since the last public meeting, Metrorail has submitted 23 new deliverables for the WMSC review in Metrorail's regular weekly submission. As I mentioned earlier, the WMSC has closed 7 caps since the last public meeting. Cap C0101 addressed a finding related to Metrorail's insufficient control of vehicle and switch movement in non-signalized or dark territory. As part of the corrective action, Metrorail issued a permanent order to define non-powered storage tracks, list the location of these tracks, and govern rail vehicle operation for these locations. Metrorail issued a separate permanent order to note that the interlocking operator is to be contacted for all collisions, emergencies, derailments, and near misses within non-controlled storage tracks. Training for relevant personnel was updated to incorporate both of these permanent orders. Cap C0150 addressed a finding from our 2021 audit of Metrorail's high voltage and traction power program that Metro was not complying with its safety certification requirements before placing traction power systems into service. As part of this CAP, Metrorail conducted a gap analysis to identify which projects were not in compliance with its safety certification requirements. Metrorail found several projects that required action to ensure Metrorail met its safety requirements and took specific steps to mitigate hazards associated with each of those projects. To address this moving forward for future projects, Metrorail revised its procedures and provided training for the appropriate personnel on its safety certification program requirements. Also related to change management, Metrorail has completed implementation of CAP C0184. This addressed a rail operations audit finding that identified inadequate internal communication, coordination, and processes to effectively manage change as required by its agency safety plan, the WMSC, and the FDA. Metrorail advanced its safety management system for rail operations with procedures for risk identification, management, and mitigation. This includes Metrorail's safety risk and hazard submission tool and associated risk management dashboard tools for its safety committees. 3 closed CAPs relate to the 2021 audit of station maintenance, elevators, and escalators. CAP C0201 addressed the finding that Metrorail was not ensuring that elevator and escalator personnel work only on specific types of equipment that they are trained to inspect, maintain, and repair. To address this, Metrorail reevaluated its training matrix for elevator and escalator personnel to identify the proper training requirements for personnel by position type. Metrorail then developed equipment familiarization training and identified the specific types of equipment personnel could then be assigned to work on. CAP C0207 addressed the finding that elevator and escalator supervisors were not completing all aspects of required quality assurance checks. As part of this CAP, Metrorail added management oversight of these quality checks. Metrorail trained personnel on the revised procedure and the importance of these QA checks. CAP C0210 addressed a recommendation related to improving data collection and analysis necessary under its public transportation safety plan. By providing more plant maintenance, elevator, and escalator personnel with improved formal training on the use of Metrorail's maintenance management information system, Maximo. Due to this CAP, Metrorail identified that personnel required Maximo training and the level of training necessary for those personnel. Metrorail then provided that training. The plant maintenance and elevator and escalator departments also work with Metrorail's reliability team to create monthly data reports. These capture items such as work order compliance, problem codes, component codes, so that responsible Metrorail groups could better track and trend data to lead to the most efficient and effective actions. Metrorail has completed work to address hazardous materials safety issues the WMSC identified in our 2022 audit of track maintenance and training. As part of CAP C0231, Metrorail removed the excess hazardous materials that were not properly labeled, stored, or disposed of. Metrorail found additional materials at that location that were improperly labeled and stored and addressed those materials as well. Metrorail's Environmental Management and Compliance Department provided direction to personnel on how to properly handle these materials in the future. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC monitors Metrorail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and oversight activities. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, and thank you for filling in for Ms. Rhodes.
Of course.
Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
See Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, thanks.
Rouse, please.
Two quick ones.
Sure.
The first for the CAP on non-signalized territory, I think was that 101.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Just for everybody's sake, how much non-signalized track does we might even have? I don't need we don't need a specific number, but is it just outside of yard facilities, just storage tracks? I can't imagine there's that much because even the yards are signalized to a certain degree. Is that correct?
I believe so. I think it's just, yeah, it's very little. There's one main line and then a few in the yard. So that's really it.
I see Mr. Quigley has appeared. Did you want to add anything there, Adam?
It's just a few storage tracks in a couple of yards, sir. I mean, I would say probably 2 or 3 storage tracks, maybe 200 feet long, a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, just trying to get an idea of the scope of the issue, not only for our benefit here, but probably with the public in general. And it's not like it's a dark territory railroad where they're
No. It's very, very small amounts, sir.
The second one is cap 184. It said Metro Rail was advancing their SMS in terms of the tools for risk hazard submission, but also the dashboards. Could you give us a little bit more flavor in terms of where that is? Have they actually implemented those? Are they using those now for the operational side of things?
So they have implemented, yes, and they are using them. They have different tools for reporting. They created quick links, QR codes, different things that they put out there to try and create that. They had an awareness campaign related to that to get that information out there. That information then can feed into dashboards where that they can kind of disseminate those issues, assign ratings to them, and then kind of get those to the people that need them and the information in local safety committees and overall committees for different departments, so that they can then see that kind of background data on what's being reported, what's being, what the issues are, and then kind of address them, accordingly. And all that kind of trending data is all located in their dashboards.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I ask is I think it's kind of important for so many,
Oh, yeah.
especially for operational issues. If a main part of that recommendation was the communication, coordination of those, having those tools in place have to be, that's the first step.
It's the first step. Yeah. It sets the baseline for everything else. So.
Okay. And beyond that, is there much more for that cap, or is that just really the idea of setting up the processes and the capability to get something that's a hazard or something that's identified by one person through so that all the parties can see it, it's transparent, and it can be addressed?
That was the majority. The majority of the cap was setting up that whole process and the reporting, so you could get it into the dashboard, see it in the dashboard, but we actually saw it through for, I believe, 6 months of records related to minutes and committees looking at those issues, whether it's the full safety department or the local safety committees, depending on what the issues are, kind of looking at it. So it is a full working active thing that we saw through to the implementation.
Okay. That's helpful. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much more that cap has left to it. I mean, we always talk about safety management, but it's one thing to talk about it and have it on a plan on the shelf. This is one of those things that, in my mind, is how are you executing your SMS, program? And this is a big one, is how you manage risk and how you communicate hazards and risk throughout the organization. So it's good to see that that's progressing, and hopefully that those sets of tools will become, a useful element here, not only for WMATA, for us and others that are looking at performance of things, particularly, like I said, on the operational side of things.
Yeah. And we obviously are going to keep continuously looking at those type of things. And we actually have our audit of this area again coming up in the fall. So that'll be a whole topic of that audit, looking at how this is, again, looking at how this is working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse, for your questions. And thank you again, Mr. O'Donnell, for the presentation. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
I have a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. O'Donnell, you talked about the ATC audit, and there was a cap C 0255.
Yes.
And you stated that basically Washington Metro would not respond to that cap. Can you tell me what that cap's about again?
That cap was in regards to the train control rooms and the asbestos hazards. Specifically, we saw areas, marked as you know, these areas contain asbestos, or these materials used for the flooring or the walls contain asbestos. Please do not disturb. They were cracked, broken, and the mastic was smashed and all over the floor. So that's why that cap was created, to address that hazard.
So essentially, you know, Washington Metro doesn't want to talk about fitness for duty, asbestos issues in the tunnels or in the workplace, and they've stopped talking to us about CAP 255. Are there any other things that they've refused to discuss now that the subpoena is out that you know of?
I mean, it's anything related to occupational safety and health. It was the ongoing lead hazard, which previously discussed in this meeting. We had items related to that were no longer, you know, going to be discussed. The C0255, and then there was other issues related to occupational and worker safety that we had previously issued in previous audits and caps, such as fall protection and things like that, where they said these items are related to worker safety or occupational health. We're not going to discuss these items anymore.
Well, and I understand that the subpoena was issued because essentially Metro's senior officials decided that they weren't going to talk about it anymore, and essentially told us that they weren't going to talk about it. Is this correct?
I'll ask Ms. Silva if you want to provide any answer there. Or feel free to hand it back to Mr. O'Donnell as you see fit.
I was going to say, so
I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to contribute.
just finish your question, because I heard all the way up to the senior officials were kind of.
Well, you know, I'll restate it. You know, it seems like there's a whole bunch of subjects that Washington Metro doesn't want to discuss, and I understand that they told us they didn't want to discuss these anymore. They didn't want to provide information, and that kind of generated one of the reasons to issue the subpoena, to understand, you know, these issues, or to get the records so that we could understand what issues were out there. Are there other areas where this is happening, or is it just growing?
So I think we are seeing more of these issues arising as products are coming due, or as we are seeking comment from WMATA on a variety of products. Two that Mr. O'Donnell may not be intimately familiar with are that our program standard is now in draft for inner review. And we also received comments about scope of authority within WMATA's comments back to us on our program standard. We have a requirement of a submittal to the Federal Transit Administration that also received some similar type of scope of authority and questions related to that. So yes, I would agree with your assessment that we are certainly hearing about WMATA's concern in this area more frequently. It did begin with an audit request that WMATA chose not to answer. And after back and forth conversations, including in-person conversations, the WMSC determined to use the tool that it has of issuing a subpoena to get that information. And WMATA has now chosen to add more under the umbrella of that subpoena. And we are hoping that we can resolve this expeditiously so that all of this work can move forward.
Well, I hope so too. I understand that we do have authority to ask for these records. In the past, we've been able to discuss these things as adults, and you know, I'm a little bit concerned about Washington Metro's attempt to shut down all conversation on these issues, and I wonder if you know what they're trying to hide, or whether there's an issue that they don't want us to know about. I don't know, but you know, I really think it's a little bit juvenile to cancel these meetings and shut down these discussions. Now we have a cap that we've discussed with them for some time, and now they won't talk about it anymore. I mean, you know, that's the only response that I can have, that it seems like a somewhat juvenile approach to us trying to do our job and them cooperating. So, that's the only questions I had, Chair Hart.
I appreciate your input, and everything I would share with all the commissioners, of course, is that all staff are standing by and ready to have those communications and to work with Metro Rail so that we can move these forward.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions from any of the other commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell? All right, seeing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process. Paul Smith, WMSC Director of Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metro Rail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metro Rail's safety management system. Identifying and understanding failure modes or hazards and proactively mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way, as documented in Metro Rail's policy and procedures, provides for the overall safety of the Metro Rail system. Metro Rail implements its safety certification program, and we oversee Metro Rail's work through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metro Rail, as well as by observing the discussions among Metro Rail safety certification committees and working groups. Metro Rail is required to carry out this work for each of its projects that meet its criteria for safety certification. In accordance with our program standard, we designate specific projects for the WMSC's in-depth review of Metro Rail safety certification activities. For these projects, Metro Rail may not activate the asset or systems into service until the WMSC concurs that Metro Rail has conducted its safety certification process, including hazard identification and any mitigations or corrective actions. Last month, we selected Metro Rail's consideration of significantly increasing its operating speeds for in-depth review. Due to safety concerns such as the proper safe stopping of trains, Metro Rail established a safe speed in 1986 of 59 miles per hour. Metro Rail has established other rules and processes related to speed following accidents, such as the 1996 fatal Shady Grove collision. Metro Rail had set a maximum speed of 65 miles per hour on specific parts of the Green Line. Metro Rail's data and WMSC's observations demonstrate that current Metro Rail systems sometimes indicate higher speeds than those limits for both the limiting and regulated speeds. In manual mode, the train operator can operate the train at Metro Rail's required limits. Therefore, the WMSC has also communicated that Metro Rail's determination related to potentially increasing these speeds by as much as 27% must occur, and if Metro Rail determines it can safely increase train speeds, receive the WMSC's concurrence prior to Metro Rail implementing automatic train operation. Alternately, Metro Rail could adjust its systems to match its existing safety rules. Regarding Metro Rail's work on automatic train operation and automatic door operation, our team continues to conduct field observations and to monitor Metro Rail's safety certification working groups, documentation, and other activities. We have been overseeing Metro Rail's work related to automatic train operation and automatic door operation for several years now. Last Friday and overnight into this morning, the WMSC team observed pilot training activities for train operators and rail traffic controllers. Metro Rail is developing this training to mitigate hazards identified in the safety certification process. The training includes the specific scenarios where manual operating mode is required to provide a higher level of safety. It also includes the required communications to provide assurance that the proper operating mode is being used. As with any inspection, the WMSC team debriefed with Metro Rail personnel on site, and we expect to observe additional activities over the next week. This is in addition to our other regulated work with Metro Rail's project team that has led to Metro Rail beginning to follow systems engineering industry practices for this project. Metro Rail is working on the automatic train operation concept of operations, and we have provided feedback each time it has been requested by Metro Rail. Our extensive oversight work and open, consistent, iterative communication provides Metro Rail with the greatest opportunity to address any identified issues early in the process. Automatic door operation is separate from the automatic train operation, and Metro Rail safety certification work on automatic door operation is specific to that system. It does not include ATO. Metrorail is conducting automatic door operation, train operator certification system-wide, and we look forward to Metrorail's continued progress. We continue our work on other safety certification oversight. This includes observation of Metrorail's wheel set replacement program and monitoring of Metrorail's ongoing work on automated wayside inspection systems and the 8000 series rail cars. This concludes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lowry.
You know, Mr. Smith, this automatic train operation system has been around since the beginning of the Washington Metro system, which was first, I believe it was first opened back in the 70s. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So we have technology here that's about 50 years old. Is this modern technology we're talking about now, or in other words, has it been upgraded over the years to match, what we have now, or is it really a dated system? Can you tell us what your feelings are on that?
Yeah, there have been technological advances in train control systems across other railroads. Positive train control is one that comes to mind. But there are also other ways to, tackle this system and these problems that were thought of in the 70s.
So with this system, does it have more capabilities than what we're using? Is it something that you can continue to build safety features into, or is it pretty much the way only the capabilities it had when the system first opened?
I think there are possibilities for other improvements to the system, barring a complete redesign, but definitely I don't know how cost effective those would be with the antiquated technology that's in place, but there certainly are areas where you could improve this technology that's in existence today.
Well, I'm wondering, do you know of any plans by Washington Metro to basically improve or update the system? I know we're buying 8000 series cars now, or is there any plan or program to continue to bring these types of systems up to date to match what the current technology is?
Yeah, so WMATA does have a program that's in its basically infancy, if you will, to move the signaling system to a communication-based train control. But that program is, like I said, basically in the beginning stages.
Well, I think it's interesting to consider this. We're going to talk about some particular accidents later on, and there seems to be opportunities to prevent some of the manual systems that Washington Metro currently uses, to basically automate them or use some more advanced technology to put some checks and balances in place. And I'm talking specifically about some of the issues that we've had with roadway worker protection, controlling train speeds, when we have workers on the track, preventing issues where we have trains proceeding without speed signals, etc. But I think that there is a place for improvements in this system and other systems to bring it up to date and to potentially incorporate more safety features that can help us lower the risk of the overall system. So, as we move forward, I'd probably like to hear some more from you in future meetings, maybe on maybe some advances that might be possible with this system in order to take on those additional tasks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Lobby.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand as well.
Yes, please, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, thanks. I'll dovetail off that, but then I have some other questions. I do think we talk a lot about, and you see in the press, the rail car side of things, the 8000 series cars. And And, while WMATA and BART and similar systems were probably, were well ahead of their times when they first came in introduction with some of the train control systems they had, arguably too far ahead in some cases with some of the issues they ran into, they were still, the right direction for the time. And I always do wonder myself, that we got how much attention has been paid to the control system over the years. Yes, comms-based systems are what we have now. Those are the state of the art, if you will. But that doesn't mean you can't make improvements on existing. Japanese upgraded their ATC systems to digital ATC. Even with PTC in the heavy rail side of things, the FRA regulated side of things, I should say, with cab signal systems and ATC systems of similar technology, some of these issues that people kind of threw their hands up originally and said, it's just the system can't do it. It's too antiquated. They found workarounds and found ways to make it work and improve the functionality of those systems. So, I'm not going to speak further on it. I think it's something that is interest of me, myself, obviously Commissioner Lobby and some others in terms of, what are they doing in that front? If you can't afford to put a brand new system in there at the moment, right? If the budget doesn't allow it, and obviously it's a significant lift to go from what we have today to a communications-based system, as anybody that works in this industry knows, and you can just, New York's a prime example of that. But it doesn't mean you can't make incremental improvements. And it's nice to have the brand new rail cars, and I work on rail cars as this Commissioner Lobby, right? So we're very fond of those things, and we know them very well. But the whole system has to be upgraded to truly take advantage of those new technologies and the equipment that you're putting capital dollars into. But that said, on this whole MAS issue, some questions there. And fair enough. If you don't have the answers, that's okay. But in the discussion, it's raised some issues of how to proceed. Obviously, if they want to increase speeds, that not necessarily a bad thing, right? We see this a lot. How do you make the service more useful for its patrons? We want travel time to be adequate for their needs, but there is a process to figuring out what you can do and what you can't do, right? And as it relates to some of these MASs, it's pretty straightforward. And I'd be curious to know, one, you brought up the issue of stopping distances. That should be known from a railroad perspective, right? It's for a block signal system, it's driven by your block sizes, right? And if you increase the MAS, you're going to increase the entry speed, which means you're going to need more stopping distance if you don't change your brake rate. But that should be pretty easy to figure out in terms of the fleet's capabilities, what they were tested to, and whether or not any retesting would need to occur to verify those. And I'll say, it's not always the highest speed that's your worst case, right? 30 miles an hour can get you in trouble if it's a very short block, the way you configure your system. So, but that's a pretty easy sanity check. What do we have? What are we capable of? Has it been tested? Does it need to be retested? Same thing with, but it's not just braking distances. Higher speeds also, you need stability, right? And I know hunting for rail vehicles is obviously usually associated with very high speed operations, but it can occur at lower speeds just as much as it can occur at high speeds, depending on the situation. So if you've got a rail car that was tested at 59 or 60 and didn't go any higher, well, what's the VTI aspects of the older fleet? Have they been tested to those speeds? And does that need to be looked at? And also curving speeds. Curving speeds, we talk about straight sections of track and MAS, but it's curving speeds where you get yourself into trouble usually. I don't know if I remember correctly, I think it was 6 inches of unbalanced super elevation or cant deficiency. And I know I'm throwing technical terms at everybody here, don't worry. But that's basically how much, if you were to raise the outside track, like you're banking a curve on a racetrack or a road, how much would you have to do it so that there's no lateral acceleration through that curve? This is a common railway engineering problem, right? The rail vehicle can't do that on its own. You either have to raise the track or you feel it in terms of the force that the rail car feels. So that's a safety issue, right? And we design cars to be able to operate at certain speeds of what we call camp efficiency. So yes, you can up the speed to 65, but there's curves before you get to those tangents. And in a system like MATA, there's a lot of curves. And so you want to make sure that you can be able to traverse those curves coming in and out of these higher speeds, but also that the ATC system has the appropriate codes to be able to ensure that nobody does go over speed coming in and out of some of the tangents where they might want to raise the speed. So I don't know how many of these things have been looked at. You know, I think like I said, it's very easy, you know, straightforward railway engineering that we've been doing for a long time now. So I think we could easily walk through WMATA to make sure those sanity checks have been done. But I'm just curious, you know, to what degree have they done this, or have they provided any of this information regarding not only its fleet, but also, you know, its design standards and the appropriate ATC enforcement side of things, or ATP side of things.
Yeah, and to get to the heart of that question, Commissioner Rouse, is that the safety certification for this project is basically, you know, kicked off. We've had two meetings where I've attended with the safety certification working group, and through our conversations already, we've raised those particular topics about ATC block design and the, you know, the reliability and the structures of the track. Those things have all been addressed with them. In the instance of the ATC block design, the chief engineer indicated that they would have the supporting documentation to give us for the silver line, but the legacy parts of the system, they don't have that documentation that they could readily provide, that the ATC block designs match the rail cars' safe braking distances for that particular part of the system. So those are some of the things that we've talked with them about, and about them either retesting or doing some type of simulation to prove that those sections of track that they plan to raise the speeds on do in fact meet the safety standards that they need to be up to. And I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some work to do. I'm not surprised that, you know, trying to unearth block designs from 50 years ago is a challenge at any railroad I've been at, whether it's
to the extent that that work was done, that's for sure. I mean, I would point out that a 1970 report on the proposed metro rail system by the NTSB expressed a degree of concern about the lack of system safety expertise involved in the project at project management levels. The Shady Grove accident report that was mentioned earlier, I think that was 1996, expressed concerns about whether or not block designs had been calculated properly. And I think in some of the work that you, or some of the engineering commentary that you expressed a moment ago, I think in very large measure you summed up some important aspects of what Metro Rail needs to do as part of its safety certification, and what our job is to verify is actually accomplished.
Well, yeah, and I think my point there is well, it may be hard, and that may be institutional knowledge. The railroad should know what it is, right? Metro Rail has to, absolutely. I don't know how you test new vehicles without knowing where your worst case stopping distance is and what it is. Because if you're going to say, yes, this fleet will work for the future, it meets our needs performance-wise, that's a number that you need to have, right? And so you may not have the drawings, but you should have the number nonetheless, right? And be able to tell where it is. Thank you. So this is an interesting one. Keep an eye on it. I think it's, like I said, it's easy. It can be done. I won't say it's easy, but it's certainly one of the ones that would, from a safety perspective, you can wrap your head around. But I've run into multiple situations in my life where some of these simple questions, or what you think is a simple question, turns out to be something that can't be answered, and then they have to go back and reverse engineer things. And I hope that's not where we are, but those are the types of questions you need to answer before you can increase speeds on a rail system.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Rouse.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Rouse. And Mr. Smith, I'd just be interested to know if you are aware of any reach out by Metro to other cities, domestic and foreign, to see how their automated systems are working, and to learn from those situations?
Yes, Commissioner Hart, Chair Hart. We have taken a trip, a few folks from the WMSC, Mr. Walker and Mr. Dorenzo, and I went to Atlanta most recently and took a look at their ATO system and did some comparisons between their ATO operation and what WMATA's proposal is to return to ATO. One of the things that we discovered during that time was that MARTA had undertaken a project where they reconfirmed their ATC block design and their rail car safe braking distances. And so in conversations with folks at WMATA, most specifically Tiffany Jenkins, their Senior Vice President for COSI, Communications and Signaling, we discussed that particular project. She asked me if I would share with her the folks that we spoke to at MARTA that talked about this project. And we gave them that information of the contact folks at MARTA so that they could have continuing discussions about how that project was undertaken, the different things that they did to test that, and some of the simulations that they conducted. So hopefully they've taken that opportunity to reach out to those folks and compare and contrast what they have for data at WMATA and how this project was undertaken. And almost similarity between MARTA and WMATA systems are so similar that you could basically take the WMATA train car and run it on the MARTA system, other than the platform heights. So there is a lot of cross comparison between those two systems. That's what we've done on that front, Chair Hart.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from Mr. Smith from any of the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, the next item on the agenda is safety event investigations. Mr. Quigley, I understand you have updates on ongoing investigations and reports to present for our consideration today. We will hear presentations on all of the remaining reports and consider a single motion on all of them collectively. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of the report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to work with Metro Rail's investigation team on investigations and associated corrective actions. We are proud of our effective collaboration and communication that has led to significant improvements in safety event investigation reports over the last 5 years. Metro Rail acknowledged the discussion you had at the last public meeting and will be incorporating the improvements to the development of Metro Rail's corrective actions to address more of the identified safety issues into future investigation reports. Due to the duration of the investigations, the results will be more apparent later in the year. We continue to investigate the September 29th, 2023 derailment near Reagan National Airport, the February 15th smoke event and evacuation of Eastern Market Station, and other accidents, incidents, and occurrences. We are involved in multiple investigative interviews and other activities each week. For example, we are investigating an event last week that involved a train operator who was unresponsive to radio transmissions for more than 30 minutes. The train was out of service at the time, and it remained stopped for more than a half an hour. A rail supervisor received permission to walk through the tunnel to board the train and reach the operator. We are also investigating events that occurred since the last public meeting related to the use of an outdated roadway worker protection track access guide, red signal overruns, a distracted train operator, and smoke on the roadway. Moving to the investigation reports before you today, the investigations included derailment, improper vehicle movement, and red signal overruns, and investigations into some improper roadway worker protection events that occurred in 2023. The first report for your consideration today is Investigation Whiskey 272. A roadway maintenance machine consist moving in an extended shutdown area near Farragut North Station struck a derailer and derailed in the pocket track on December 18th, 2023. The roadway worker in charge at what Metro Rail calls its mobile command center instructed automatic train control maintenance personnel to adjust switches for the intended movement. Prime mover 46, pushing 2 flat cars, was to move from track 1 through the pocket track to track 2. ATC maintenance personnel aligned the switches but did not adjust the fixed derailer in this area. Therefore, there was not a clear route. Metrorail procedures require the control point to direct personnel to move the derailer to the desired position. This instruction was not provided by the person in mobile command who directed ATC personnel to realign the switches. The ATC crew reported the switches were aligned for the intended move. The equipment operator on prime mover 46 moved the consist forward with permission to pass the red signal. The flagman at the lead end did not identify that the derailer was in place to derail the vehicle. The leading flat car moved into the derailer and the front truck derailed. The derailment damaged switch 5B and the front truck of the flat car. After the event, the flag person said they were not aware of the permanent derailer at this location. The derailer also did not have the high visibility paint required by Metrorail, but there was a sign in place. After this event, Metrorail inspected its fixed mainline derailers and applied the intended high visibility paint and cleaned compounded grease. Metrorail's Wayside Work Planning Department committed to identifying and rectifying any errors during the development of each long-term shutdown map to ensure items such as derailers are properly reflected. Metrorail's Track and Structures Department communicated the importance of including a derailer's location in roadway job safety briefings. Metro is also in the process of implementing corrective action plans related to items identified in this investigation, such as C-183 related to territory familiarization and physical characteristic training for operational personnel. Metrorail plans to conduct initial training under this cap starting next month. Thank you, Chair Hart. That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. Quigley, looking at the report here, I note the roadway worker in charge was not at the site, but he was at a separate location. I had always assumed that the roadway worker in charge needed to be at the site. Is this a common occurrence on Metrorail?
When they do these extended shutdowns, sir, yes, they refer to it as mobile command. So there is almost a command center for that shutdown location.
So it's only done in particular situations where they have long-term maintenance being conducted. Is that the understanding?
Yes, sir.
Are we okay with this? You know, what do we think about having a roadway worker in charge located in a remote location and not at the work site?
I would just say that, I mean, Metro has a good batting average when it comes to events and shutdown locations like this.
They have a good batting average, did you say?
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, they have a good batting average. I mean, there's always seems to be accident level event when we have long-term shutdown locations, especially when contractors are involved, sir.
Okay, well, I guess this is something we should probably keep our eye on. Thank you.
Chair Hart, Commissioner Rouse also raised his hand.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse, please.
I was curious about this whole issue with the derailleur. You know, this isn't like a temporary derail. It seems to be a fixed asset, and I'm wondering how, you know, much like our previous conversation about not knowing block distances and or whatever the stopping distance is, how this gets missed on an operation where critical assets are kind of key to having a system like ATO or ATC in place. You know, every place that I've been where you have a derail that's not a manually thrown derail, like a flop over type or anything that would be in a yard facility or something off the main line, is part of what's considered a critical asset inventory, not only for the controllers and for those that are doing work at the control points, the personnel out there, but also from a train control perspective. It's a device that if it's thrown incorrectly, its primary purpose is to derail a train, right? And so I'm wondering, how is this? I noted the report said it wasn't on the Visio map, and I can see, you know, that being an issue, but why is it, how is an asset like this not cataloged? And how does that relate to assets that they track for something like the ATC system? Is it because it's integrated with another switch, so it's assumed that it's always in the correct position when a switch is thrown a certain way, or could
Yeah,
you
that's correct.
share some light on that?
Yeah, that's correct. So depending on how the routes are selected in the pocket track, because we're talking about pocket tracks that have 1, 2, and 3. So if there's a route set that's into the pocket track, the derailer is in a derailer position to keep, just in case that train or vehicle that goes in that pocket track doesn't accidentally overrun that red signal and come back out onto an active revenue track. So depending on how the switches or the signals are set and aligned, that is how it depends on how the derailleur is placed, either in a derailleur, or if there's a route coming out of the pocket track, then obviously the derailleur goes into a non-derail position. So it's like an automatic derailleur.
Okay. Yeah. So it's always configured with some sort of logic, but it's not
Yes.
manually connected. That's done by logic from a software side or from
the software. So due to them manually throwing the switches because this was the work location, ATC had control of the panel, the TCR room, and they were manually aligning switches up. They, forgot to manually adjust the derailer based on their selection.
That's interesting in and of itself. Just trying to go out there and throw it. But I just curious. I mean, how does that relate to when you go back into operations? If they don't remember to, let's say they move it out of position from what it's supposed to be, how are they able to ensure that it's realigned before putting it back into service, so that you don't have a situation where the derail are still in effect and you have a switch thrown in a direction that could have that impact of revenue move?
Right. So let's say they finish their work location or work and they turn the control panel over to the control center. If there's what they call a call. I don't know the exact term in the control center. They call it a call. You place a call on a switch or a derailer, it doesn't allow any movement. It's almost like a blocking device, but it's through the software program. So if they don't remove that call, or they don't change the derailer into the correct position, no one will be allowed to get that correct route. So the control center could not set a route and get a lunar unless that derailer was removed properly.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. It's because that's my concern. Is that
I agree.
it's big enough issue here in this case that it may have been misaligned because it was missed, but. If it's out of alignment when you go back into service, that's a concern as well. So
understood.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. Are there any other questions for Mr. Quigley regarding this report? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Keyrose, would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 0273, 274, 275, 276, and 277 relate to improper movement of trains. On May 28th, 2023, based on a supervisor's instruction to permit a prime mover to advance to a specific location, a rail traffic controller improperly provided permission to the equipment operator to move to a location past a red signal without assuring that switches were aligned as required for safe movement. This occurred at the D&G junction east of Stadium Army Station. The system was closed to passengers overnight. As the equipment operator was passing the red signal, an ATC maintenance crew reported that they had taken local control of the interlocking. The rail traffic controller radioed to the equipment operator to stop. The prime mover stopped approximately 500 feet from the misaligned switch, which was the second switch that the vehicle would have traversed. The ATC crew clamped the switch, and the vehicle was then moved through the remainder of the interlocking. Metrorail removed the control center supervisor and assistant operations manager from service for post-event drug and alcohol testing as required by Metrorail procedures. The testing did not identify any violations of those policies. The probable cause of this event was the ineffective use of all available resources to assure a safe and efficient operation. Specifically, the improper direction from the assistant operations manager was not identified or corrected prior to prime mover 43 passing a red signal when a switch was on the route was misaligned, risking derailment. Following this event, Metro Rail provided safety briefings to rail traffic controllers and posted information in the control center stating that controllers can speak up if they identify a problem. Metro Rail re-instructed the assistant operations manager and rail traffic controller. Investigation Whiskey 0274 relates to a train operator moving an in-service train without required permission or protection after the train showed zero speed commands. Zero speed commands indicate that the train is required to stop for reasons such as preventing a collision or derailment. The rail traffic controller instructed the train operator to hold at Addison Road Station. The train operator did not respond and moved the train toward the next station. When the train reached the turnback location beyond the platform, the speed commands changed to 0, and then the train applied automatic braking. Rail traffic controllers had set the turnback to provide this 0 speed command. A turnback is designed to indicate the location a train operator should move forward to prior to reversing ends to operate the other way at specific locations in the rail system, such as interlockings. The train operator, without required permission or protection, entered stop and proceed mode to bypass the 0 speed commands. The train operator moved more than 400 feet toward Morgan Boulevard Station without speed commands and without permission or protection. After passing the turnback, speed commands returned. The train operator stated that they would move under a permissive block. A train operator cannot know whether this movement is safe. Only a rail traffic controller can provide a block in this scenario. The rail traffic controllers correctly identified this improper movement and informed rail supervisors in the field. Investigation Whiskey 07.
Ms. Kuros, can we ask some questions on these before we go to the next one?
Sure.
I had a couple of questions on this one, and it's a little bit frustrating. Again, we have a radio issue where the operator did not hear a stop and hold at Addison Station. You know, the fact that the operator didn't hear the stop and proceed, was the operator supposed to basically follow the speed signals that he received in his cab?
That's correct. So those turnback signals, they give the train 0 speed commands, and rail traffic controllers can use those if they need to stop a train for a reason and they haven't been able to reach the train through radio.
Okay, so my understanding is that the operator had a speed signal when he was stopped on the platform, and that the 0 speed signal didn't take place until he was like 500 feet into the down the track or into the tunnel, whichever way it was. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so really the operator did absolutely nothing wrong, you know, leaving the platform, since he didn't hear the announcement from the controller and never acknowledged the stop and hold at the end of Addison Station. He had a speed signal at the end of the platform and basically just proceeded 563 into the tunnel.
Correct. And until the train operator got to the turnback and had 0 speed commands.
Okay, and when he got to the 0 speed command, that's where he made a mistake by proceeding from that point.
Correct.
Okay, so really the safety feature that was supposed to prevent this incident would have been for the operator to obey the 0 speed signal and not proceed without permission from the controller.
Correct.
I have one other question about this. It talks about the rail traffic controller setting up a permissive block ahead. Can you explain what a permissive block actually is?
Sure. So in this incident, the controller did not give the train a permissive block, but what a permissive block is just a section of track ahead of the train that's clear and safe for the train to move. So if a train does lose speed commands, they are not allowed to move their train without some type of a block. So it would either be a permissive block, which would be a section of track in front of the train that they have a permission to move to. And an absolute block would include behind the train and in front of the train. So two types of blocks essentially.
All right, thank you very much. And Chair Hart, I have questions on the next couple of accidents also. So if we could, I think it'd help if we just pause after the presentation to talk about them if possible.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Does anybody else have any questions on Whiskey 0274 before we go to 275? Okay.
Well, Chair Hart, I have one on the previous one. I don't know if we want to cover that now or since we've already gone down this path.
Sure.
Go for
it. And I forget what the number on that one was, but I want to focus on the probable cause of, this is the one with PM43, the moving past the red 0273, improper rail movement. So the probable cause in this case is the probable cause of this event was the ineffective use of all available resources to assure a safe and efficient operation. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, honestly, I think this is one of those where, you know, how do we tangibly address the issue? What was the issue in that situation? It's my understanding from reading the report that, you know, either they had track and time or they had an absolute block, and at some point somebody violated that, right? And was somewhere they were not supposed to be. So it looks like really what happened was it was improper direction from is this the assistant operations manager?
That's correct.
Okay, what is their role in regards to that incident versus, let's say, the controller or the operator or the roadway worker in charge?
Well, essentially, if a rail traffic controller is told to do something by their supervisor, they might feel pressured to just do as they're told, and instead of questioning that person or maybe thinking there's a different way to do it. And that's why part of the corrective actions was to try to empower controllers to speak up if they feel that their supervisor was saying to do something unsafe.
Okay, but in this case, the AOM, are they, for everybody's benefit, the managers of the controllers?
Correct.
Okay, and so it appears that they were the only one that was disciplined in this or removed from service, or was there any other action taken? Because I'm trying to get at is how is it that was it their direction that was given to go past this
the red signal? Yeah. So this incident, there was a little bit of confusion because there was a switch out of correspondence. So when there was essentially a switch out of correspondence kind of close to a revenue time is kind of an emergency. So I think, you know, there was a sense of urgency to get this switch fixed, and they were waiting on ATC personnel to arrive, and they already had these track personnel who are qualified to crank and clamp switches on this prime mover. So the instruction was to get this prime mover to that switch quickly so they could at least clamp it. And they were instructed to give them a block to a chain marker. And the chain markers on their system, the display system that the controllers see, are it's not always going to be perfectly aligned of where the chain marker is in line with where the signal is. So what happened was the chain marker was a little bit past this red signal. And that's where the confusion was. They were trying to get this switch fixed quickly, and they were trying to get them to a chain marker, not realizing that the chain marker was past the red signal. Okay,
but this direction didn't come from the rail traffic controller, correct?
So the supervisor told the rail traffic controller to say it on the radio, and that's where the rail traffic controller gave the block on the radio to the prime mover. Okay, but when we say rail traffic controller, here's my other question from reading this report that I couldn't figure out. It mentions the WMATA report mentions the radio RTC. Is that a different person than the controller who's looking at the dispatch
screen, giving authorities.
No, there is two controllers on a console, and the radio controller is on the radio, and then the other controller is a button controller. The button controller sets the actual routes and answers the phones. So the rail traffic controller is the radio controller.
Okay, so the person that set the route or the block was not the one that gave direction to the operator in the field?
So
Okay.
This interlocking was out of correspondence, so that's why the signal was red. There was no route to be set. So
Okay.
Right.
But I guess my point is seems like there's 4 people involved in this incident, right? There's the operator of the machinery, or at least in this instance, there's the AOM, there's the rail traffic controller pushing buttons, and then there's the rail traffic controller radioing things, right? So there's a lot of people involved for what should have been just get out of the way, go to this location and stop, right? This milepost, this chain marker, however it's denoted on the system, and stop. And it seems like, to me, that's where this issue occurs. There's too many people involved for what should have been the person most knowledgeable about the authority. Seems like they weren't even involved in the instructions. The person who knows where there's work limits set up, whether they're issuing a route or just saying, please proceed to this, you have permission to proceed to this location and this location only. That person doesn't seem to even be involved here. There's two other people who may not have known what those exact limits were just, for some reason or another, didn't have the precise information, providing information for somebody operating this machinery. And so that's to my point about the probable cause. I'm trying to tease out what we in WMATA can do to fix this problem in the future. And it seems more on this, who was the person most enabled to provide the correct information to the operator? And did that happen? Did they not follow the instructions directly, or did they just get the wrong information in the first place? And it seems like that's part of the problem, is the person that should have been telling them, go to this limit, wasn't part of the situation here. It was 2 other parties who didn't have the precise information in front of them, trying to hurry, trying to get people out of the way. And here's the situation, right? I don't know if that's a good synopsis here, but I guess my point is that when we look at some of these accidents, that's kind of the heart and what I'm looking at, what can we fix? And this is a big issue for me, is if the person that has the most critical information isn't involved in the process, that's a problem in the first place, right? What do we do about that? How do we fix that going forward? And 2, how do we identify that when we're looking at a report like this? How do we tease it down to that is something we can fix? That's a tangible thing that we can say, okay, this occurred because of these Swiss hole cheeses, the holes lined, and that's something we can fix by blocking this hole, if you will. The general statement of lack of communication or ineffective, good buzzwords, but it's not getting to the heart of what we need to fix here. And I, just moving forward, I want to make sure we're more clear on terms of what the probable causes are that are tangible elements that we can fix. And for this issue in particular, this is something we've seen before, where there's communications issues because the people giving the instructions are either overriding somebody else in control center, in ROCC, or whatever it's called now, or are not the best equipped to be giving that information in the first place. And so that's for me where we need to start figuring out what we can do with WMATA to eliminate this for future events.
Understood.
Well, Commissioner Rouse, it's not always, who's in the best position. It's, we have accidents where we got too many people involved, and there should be one voice of authority that directs all this, and that person's got to know what he's talking about, and that person, needs to be the only one to give these permissions. And so many times we have people that don't have that responsibility giving direction that they shouldn't. So it is. I agree with you. It's a big issue. This communication, but it's not always about the person that may think he knows best. There's got to be one person with authority that directs these types of movements.
No, you're right. I agree that there's too many people involved, and traditional, here's your authority, read back that to me so we're on the same page. When you put too many parties in here and people injecting, their authority, it's alarming, and it's not something new either. We've seen this before. So.
Any other comments?
All.
Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Rouse. Any other questions on 273? Okay, 274. All right, hearing none, let's move to Whiskey 0275.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0275 relates to a train operator improperly moving a train on the Blue Line on May 24th, 2023. The train operator first reported that the train was experiencing mechanical issues. The train operator conducted some troubleshooting and requested permission to cut out automatic train protection. This is the vital system designed to ensure safe operation by imposing speed limits to ensure safe train separation and speeds. The rail traffic controller did not provide permission to cut out ATP. During this time, there was heavy radio traffic. The rail traffic controller directed the train operator to activate power knockout, which allows the train operator to take a point of power even if the brakes do not release. The rail traffic controller provided a permissive block to move forward toward Franconia Springfield Station. The train operator later reported to the controller that activating power knockout did not work, so they cut out automatic train protection and the train moved. Moving without ATP increases the risk of collision, which is why it may only be done with permission. Vehicle data review showed that the train operator did not initiate power knockout as directed. After the event, the train operator stated they became frustrated and cut out ATP on their own, outside of approved procedures. Vehicle data showed that while ATP was cut out, the train operator moved the train with passengers on board 1.5 miles at speeds up to 31 miles per hour. This exceeds the maximum authorized speed of 15 miles per hour when ATP is deactivated. Inspection by automatic train control maintenance of the area where the train lost speed commands initially found a corroded resistor and wet cross bond inside a wheezy bond. This system is part of the signal system that is necessary to provide proper speed commands and track circuit information. After this event, Metrorail replaced that wheezy bond. Metrorail is in the process of implementing CAP C0181, designed to address the culture of noncompliance with written operational rules and procedures. The WMSC is also considering further performance monitoring requirements. Metrorail is in the process of implementing corrective action plans to address the automatic train control and signals audit issued in January. These include CAPs related to proper performance of maintenance and inspection tasks. Did you want to pause for this one?
Yes, please. Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding 275?
I have a short question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Loudon.
I look at, I note that the train operator stated that he became frustrated and cut ATP out. And then he didn't follow the procedures that related to it. But it said that he made several requests to cut out ATP, was not granted permission. When you say he's not granted permission, did somebody say, no, you do not have permission to cut out ATP, or is it just silence? And the reason I'm asking this is because of the radio issues that we hear about where the communication is not always clear, or they don't get the answer. Did somebody specifically tell him, no, you do not have permission to cut out ATP?
Adam, I didn't know if you knew specifically on this one.
No, it wasn't like that, Commissioner Lobby. It was more that the controller was trying other ways of troubleshooting, which weren't effective, and that's why the train operator was kind of losing patience. But there is a troubleshooting procedure, to determine if it is a brake issue or an ATP issue, and that was not followed. Usually you go to a point of power and you look at your brake cylinder pressure to see if it moves and determine if it's, if you're required to take out ATP, or or power knockout to trick the brakes to think that they're released. So that's kind of what was going on. They just kind of lost. They had probably already saw what was going on in their console and couldn't get the controller on board fast enough.
Okay, so it was basically a failure of following the troubleshooting procedures that were there and not getting a quick enough answer to what was going on, I assume.
Yes, mixed with all the other radio traffic that was going on, other requests that were coming through to the radio traffic controller.
Okay, thank you. Understood.
So
Thank you,
obviously
Commissioner Lobby.
that may provide a degree of explanation about the frustration experienced on the part of the train operator, but the fact remains that the train operator, without required permission, disabled a safety system and moved the train.
Correct. And you know, obviously went above the 15 miles an hour that they knew they couldn't go above.
So what are we proposing as a remedy for, I'm not sure if I understand what we're proposing to do as a result of this accident.
Well, it's in general, isn't it just failure to follow procedures? Isn't that what we're always talking about? Another instance where the operators don't follow the policies and procedures that are set up for them.
I was going to ask, was the
unusual
operator, just retrained, or was this? I mean, we talked about certification earlier. Normally, this would be failure to follow rules would mean you're out of service for a while. Did that happen here, or do they even have that? Is it just we're going to retrain you to what you show?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know they were retrained. Don't know about the disciplinary, as we try to stay clear of that thing. But I mean, we could definitely inquire and find out what disciplinary actions were taken outside of the refresher training.
Yeah, I don't really see it so much as a disciplinary thing as a certification issue, right? This is you don't want operators that are not going to follow procedures, because that's dangerous, right? And so I get it. It's frustrating. You're waiting for information dispatch, but last thing you want to do is bypass a safety system and take it into your own hands, because that's how accidents occur. And so for me, it goes beyond discipline of an individual. It's certification of process for your train operators, engineers, whatever you want to call them in general, right? Because this is the type of stuff that you can't tolerate. And yeah, people make mistakes. You want to make sure you have a program in there to be able to address honest mistakes versus willful violations. But there's also got to be more for those that are going to be willing to sidestep the safety process. There's got to be a process for identifying them and keeping them out of the operator's seat.
And I agree with that. And the process for that needs to be more effective than just retraining that person, because that does nothing to help ensure that it won't happen again in the same circumstance.
We agree with your sentiments, and we will review this operator's certification status and see if there's any appropriate area of action for us.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions from any of the commissioners on 275?
I'd just like to say, that this is a good point. Passing a red signal or probably disabling the automatic train protection system these are kind of cardinal sins that probably rate more attention than some of the other violations that we see. But these are issues that can really lead to an unintentional unsafe situation where we have a train collision or something else.
And the question again is whether this indicates a systemic design that's inadequate and that doesn't adequately help get the job done without having to make workarounds that end up getting people in trouble. Yeah, and it's like I think David mentioned, it's not our job to decide discipline action on the railroad side. That's they have the details. They can determine what was done or not done or what should have been done. I'm just looking at the broader picture of how are we tracking these issues? If this happens in that type of situation,
is there elements of the program that enable them to get back into the seat? Or is there the right checks and balances to make sure that those that are not doing things by pure accident or lack of training or whatever it may be are still recycling through the system? That to me is the bigger picture here for us, is the process itself, not the individual, so to speak.
Right, so that the process aims at a systemic issue and not just retrain somebody. Any further questions on 275? Okay, 276, please.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0276 relates to improper movement of an in-service train and associated red signal overrun at L'Enfant Plaza Station on October 27th, 2023. The train operator who moved past the red signal had just taken over operation from another operator who had been informed of the red signal by a rail traffic controller. The switch of operators at L'Enfant Plaza Station and an earlier switch at Reagan National Airport Station were not communicated to the rail traffic controller. The train operator that left the train had entered stop and proceed mode with permission to properly berth the train at L'Enfant Plaza Station. After keying down the train, this mode remained active when the other train operator keyed up the train. The train operator who had taken over operation then moved the train forward while communicating out the window with the departing operator. The train still had zero speed commands and there was a red signal. The switches in the interlocking were not aligned for this train's movement. The train reached 13 miles per hour and passed the red signal. Automatic braking applied. The rail traffic controllers received a red signal overrun alarm and contacted the train operator. The train stopped prior to the switch and did not cause any damage. The train operator acknowledged the mistake of not paying attention to the signal and rail alignment prior to moving the train. After this red signal overrun, Metrorail provided additional training to the operator and distributed information to other train operators regarding red signal overruns. And I can pause for questions here as well.
Yes, please, because that raises the same issue of not looking at the systemic issues and just retraining people. Go ahead. Any commissioners with questions on 276?
I had a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Yes, please, Commissioner Loudon.
This resulted because there was instructions issued by the radio. Is that correct?
Repeat, I'm sorry.
There were instructions issued by the radio that to train operator number 1 that train operator number 2 never saw. Is that my understanding correct?
Well, it is correct that the new train operator, when they took over, they didn't hear the previous radio transmissions, but the train still had red signal and zero speed commands.
Yeah, well, I wonder why there's such a dependency on sending instructions by radio when we have so many problems with the radio transmissions. The operators don't hear it. The operators don't understand it. They read it back and they read it back correctly and nobody says anything. And to me, unless you have a very strict protocol where you write things down or repeat back 100%, any attempt to provide train operating instructions by radio, is really seems to me to be a risky way to move forward. And what it does is it takes attention off of the signal system. The operator should always be following the signal system, and only in very rare circumstances where they go through some certain checks and balance should they have permission to ignore those signal systems. But I think in the case of Metrorail, we've basically put two competing systems in place. We have instructions that are received by radio and that maybe override or don't agree with the signal system, and then we have what signal system tells, and there seems to be confusion about which one to follow at times, and maybe it means that you don't pay enough attention to the signal system, you end up running past a red signal. But again, this dependency on instructions issued by radio, I think, is an area where there needs to be a lot of improvement.
And I assume that there is no alternative way to communicate?
Just through the signal system, I would assume.
That's correct. The signal system or radios, or in very rare cases, maybe hand signals. But I mean, unlike airplanes, I mean, there is no ACARS teleprinter or anything like that.
So if
the magic acronym, I was going to point that, you know, that system's been in place for a very long time for this very reason, to avoid any miscommunication. Is you get a printout. This is your permission to, you know, do whatever it is you've requested.
And obviously written train orders precede all of aviation, and they precede really all of transit operations, and they remain an FRA requirement. And on FRA regulated railroads, if it's a single person operation, the train is brought to a stop to receive differing instructions that must be communicated. Transit generally operates differently and generally does permit radio instructions to modify previously issued instructions. That said, every transit property is a little different in its level of reliance on the radio to provide instructions. And Metro, over its long history, has evolved to a system that is pretty heavily dependent on the use of radio to modify instructions for movement and related activities.
So how frequently does this occur that the radio communication doesn't work and then necessitates plan B on what's the next step?
I don't think that we have a quantitative answer for you on that. However, we certainly notice that in our investigations and notifications, implication is frequent for radio coverage and radio related issues. It's something that we have covered in our prior audit of communication systems, something that I'm certain we'll cover again, and something that we're actually discussing internally if it should be a subject of a more detailed look.
Well, you know, in the railroad industry, track warrants are issued when you have issues with signal systems or you need to give specific instructions, and that's a very formal process where a track warrant is issued and the operator copies it down and reads it back exactly, and if the readback is incorrect or anything is misunderstood, the track warrant is invalid and they have to do it over again. And this is kind of an old system with the railroads. It's proven itself to be very safe. When I was at Federal Railroad Administration, there were requests that the railroads wanted to go to a digital track warrant method where a special instruction was basically sent digitally, so that the operator or locomotive engineer or operator would have in front of him the specific requirements of the warrant and provide specific instructions on what they were to do. With that method, there's an acknowledgement that yes, you've received the track warrant, but there was no readback necessary. And you know, when we talk about, you know, modern systems, whether it's automatic train operation for Metro Rail or other technology that could be used, this radio coverage and radio transmission of instructions is so risky and outdated, at least the way they do it, that you know, it may be something for Metro Rail to consider to have some type of method to provide digital instructions in the future where an operator actually has a written set of instructions to follow rather than something he heard or didn't hear over the radio. Just my opinion, though.
Well, my bottom line is I'm going to be basically left unsatisfied if the best we can do is to retrain somebody and we don't have a better systemic response to what appears to be a systemic issue. Any further questions on this one? Okay, 277.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0277 relates to improper movement and associated red signal overrun at West Falls Church on July 21st, 2023. This involved a train operator who had never before operated a train out of the West Falls Church rail yard. The operator moved an out-of-service train past a red signal and into the West Falls Church station, trailing switch 17A. The interlocking operator had given the train operator permission to move to signal Kilo 0622 at the end of the yard lead track. The train operator contacted the rail traffic controller for permission to enter the main line. However, the train operator reported being at the signal for the adjacent track. The rail traffic controller provided the proper signal in a readback, but did not ensure this correction was understood. The train operator was incorrectly looking at a signal to the left of the train when this signal is to the right. The train operator's training notes wrongly stated this signal was on the left side. The other signal on the left was flashing lunar for proceed on a diverging route. The train operator improperly entered stop and proceed mode and moved forward, moving the train into the center track at West Falls Church Station. After this event, Metrorail directed rail supervisors to discuss with train operators requirements for operation near red signals and interlockings. Metrorail provided training to the train operator. Metrorail is in the process of implementing CAP C0183, addressing the finding that Metrorail creates safety risk by not requiring and conducting territory familiarization and physical characteristics training and not assessing knowledge of physical characteristics prior to assigning operations personnel work on a line, in a terminal, or in a yard. Metrorail plans to begin implementing training and qualification under this CAP for some red line operators next month. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key-Rose. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Key-Rose on 277?
I have a very quick one.
Yes, please, Commissioner
I
Rao.
promise this one's an easy one. I'm not going to go on some soapbox here, but was this a dwarf signal or was this just a full signal positioned on the opposite side? Does anyone know?
Full signal. I don't think they have door signals on Metro.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't have pot signals. I guess we
Yeah.
call them pot signals. Yeah, and they don't have pot signals.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. 'Cause this one's a hard one. I mean, I know when you're so used to looking at a signal, and you have multiple tracks and you're always looking left. It's so.
I believe this was the first time this operator had brought a train out of West Falls Churchyard as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't usually get a lot of attention for physical characteristics for yard as much as you do mainline. So
They don't get any. So
The lack of physical characteristics training has been an issue for us that we have interacted with Metro and continue to do so under the CAP process. Certainly signals on left side and right side, although not particularly common, is something that Metro train operators do encounter on some of the track. And I would just add that although the terminology dwarf signal is a very common FRA terminology, it's much less common in transit, and I'm not familiar with that term being used for any of the systems at Metro.
So this is an interesting case. This is the individual's, the operator's first day on the job, and I notice, and these were full height signals, but I notice in his notes for his job briefing or his training that he has the signals labeled, but he has them labeled on the wrong side. So he thinks, and it should be noted that this also happened in very bad weather with rain and fog and not a real clear view of the signal. So hard to really blame the operator for making a mistake. You know, it sounds like he tried to do the right thing. He had notes there that he referred to, and the notes were unfortunately incorrect. He had the two signals switched on the numbers. But you know, it goes back to certification, and it goes back to his familiarity with the operating area. And those are big issues. I think that need to be looked at, especially the certification piece.
Yeah, and where I was going with this too, sometimes is there ways, just like we talked about derails, it's so easy if a derail isn't marked properly going into a yard, especially at night. Sometimes they lose their markings. They're painted in brightly, but over time you just can't see them anymore. It's easy to set up an operator for failure in situations like that. And I'm wondering if there's anything that that has been looked at that can be done in situations like this where it is out of the normal, right? Where they're not expecting to see it on this, to highlight it somehow so that they have a fighting chance in situations like that, whether they're new or the weather conditions are bad. So, thankfully this is a low speed scenario. This is a yard, but there's always something to be learned here, and this is something we see commonly.
Definitely something to be learned, and there may be lessons that we can take forward, but I would just point out a couple of things. I mean, there are best practices that I've seen on other systems, and I believe actually in use on this system, where signage is used to remind operators for unusual signal placement. At the same time, the whole purpose of training, physical characteristics training, and certification is to ensure that somebody is ready to perform the job on day one. And so it is important, and we will continue to oversee Metro Rail safety to this standard. It is important that those things work to produce people who are ready to perform the duties that they're assigned.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Any further questions from Ms. Quiroz on any of her presentations? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Quigley, it's your turn again.
Thank you, Chair Hart. These investigation reports relate to improper roadway worker protection. These reports cover some of the events that occurred last year. These are being presented together as they are ready for your consideration. WMSC is also preparing to issue a roadway worker protection audit report. As mentioned earlier, the Metro Rail will have 30 days to provide any comments on the draft report. After considering those comments, we will issue a final report. For any findings in the final report, Metro Rail must develop and implement corrective action plans. Metro Rail is separately working on implementing corrective action plans such as C-181 to address the finding that elements of Metro Rail have a culture that accepts non-compliance with written operational rules, instructions, and manuals. As a result of these investigations that we will be presenting, Metro Rail issued safety bulletins, retrained personnel, among other corrective actions. Metro Rail is also implementing or has completed implementation of corrective actions related to other improper roadway worker protection investigations that have been previously adopted or will be presented at future meetings. 4 of the final investigation reports before you today relate to roadway workers entering the roadway or moving through an area without necessary permission or protection. Investigation Whiskey 278 relates to a traction power maintenance employee acting as a roadway worker in charge, entering the roadway without required permission or protection against collision on January 11th, 2023. They had asked the rail traffic controller for foul time to access a tiebreaker station near Columbia Heights Station. The rail traffic controller directed the crew to stand by while a train passed their location. However, the roadway worker in charge did not repeat back the transmission correctly. The RIC stated in the repeat back that they had been granted foul time. Neither the RIC nor the rail traffic controller identified the error until the RIC reported that they were relinquishing foul time. I'll pause for any questions on that one.
Just to point out, this is another example of using the radio to provide instructions that are misunderstood with incorrect readbacks. So just another data point here.
Yeah, and I will follow up and say that we have been looking at the numbers on these types of events where personnel in the field think they have or been granted foul time. There were changes to the rule where originally when a roadway worker had asked for foul time, the controller would basically give them the signal that was canceled, that was red, and then give them the signal that they had prohibited. Prohibited means they put a little box on the aim screen, and as long as that box is around the exit signal, that route cannot be set. So it's just like a double, protection. They've removed that requirement from the controllers speaking to roadway workers. So before you almost always knew you had foul time because you were given a signal that you had to repeat back to the control center. That is not required anymore. So that is something that we will look into more, as we see an increase in these foul time violations.
Do you know why the requirement was removed?
To speed up the process, sir.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions regarding 280? Okay, Mr. Quigley, 281.
Investigation Whiskey 281 relates to a traction power maintenance crew entering the roadway without permission or protection against collision on January 29th, 2023. The initial work area request for the crew covered a smaller area that the crew required. After discussing changing those working limits, the crew requested and received a power outage tag from the power desk for the original area. The work crew then entered the roadway despite not having permission or protection from the rail traffic controller. The rail traffic controller identified this near miss after their controller screen showed shunts had been placed by the work crew. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Quigley? Okay, proceed.
All right. Investigation Whiskey 0280 relates to an automatic train control maintenance crew moving through a hotspot requiring foul time protection without requesting or receiving this protection required to safely traverse through the restricted view curve. The crew was walking between Rockville and Twin Brook stations on January 13th, 2023. Their job safety briefing did not include this hotspot, despite it being listed in Metro Rail's Trek Access Guide. No member of the crew identified this safety issue. Rail traffic controllers identified this improper roadway worker protection when the crew reported reaching Rockville Station, even though the crew had not requested or received foul time protection. No one was injured in that event. Any questions?
Hearing none, proceed to 0289, please.
Yes, sir. Investigation Whiskey 289 relates to a track and structures inspection crew moving through known hotspots without permission or protection on May 14th, 2023. The roadway worker in charge requested foul time near Reagan National Airport Station. The rail traffic controller directed the crew to stand clear and allowed prime mover 42 to move through the area. The rail traffic controller attempted to contact the crew and got no response. Later, the roadway worker in charge requested foul time again. The controller requested the RIC's location. The RIC did not respond. The controller then contacted the equipment operator who confirmed they passed the work crew in the area where foul time was required. The controller then granted additional foul time to the RIC for the crew to safely exit the roadway and directed the crew to clear the roadway. Any questions on that?
I would just,
The commissioner?
yeah, another one right here, right? Where we have communication issues between dispatch and individuals on the right of way and trains. It's another point that we've highlighted before.
Okay. Investigation Whiskey 288 relates to a contractor's senior safety manager who entered the roadway without required permission or protection against collision. They entered the tunnel through a vent shaft, then walked across the roadway without the required Metro Rail escort and without the required safety protections to ensure they would not be struck by a rail vehicle, would not be electrocuted, and would not be otherwise harmed. The work crew was behind a safety barrier in a location that did not require protection against train movement. Other contractors identified the improper roadway worker protection. In an investigative interview, the contractor said that they had previously worked in Metro Rail's long-term shutdown area where Metro Rail states its rules do not apply, so assumed power was de-energized and permission was not needed. This was incorrect. Metro Rail did not ensure this event was reported to the WMSC within the required 2 hours. The event was reported to the Rail Operations Control Center approximately 5 hours after it occurred. Metro Rail then reported it to the WMSC. Any questions on this one? All right, Chair Hart, that completes these presentations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Apparently not, as Mr. Quigley just asked. Now it's your turn again, Ms. Key Rose. Would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0292 relates to personnel entering the roadway on the wrong track and moving opposite of their intended direction. On July 27th, 2023, 2 track inspectors intending to walk on track 1 from Medical Center Station to Grosvenor Strathmore Station instead walked on track 2 back toward Bethesda Station. They had been at Medical Center Station for about 25 minutes due to a train malfunction causing delays on the red line and sat for part of the time on a station bench. After getting permission to continue walking toward Grosvenor, under advanced mobile flagging protection on track 1, the inspectors entered the roadway in the opposite direction on the other track. The roadway worker in charge had not previously conducted track inspections in this area of the red line. A train operator of train 104 encountered the crew but continued past them after stopping. The train operator reported passing the workers and spoke with the inspectors. The rail traffic controller instructed the operator of train 105 to search for track walkers. That train operator picked up the mobile work crew. Metrorail provided training to the inspectors and addressed the urgency of reporting safety events with the operator of train 104. I think I can pause there.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Key Rose regarding this report? That's 292. Okay, proceed.
2 final investigation reports before you today relate to the actions or setup of advanced mobile flagger. These are personnel Metrorail assigns to position themselves at the end of the station platform with an amber lantern on the ground and an orange flag in their hands to stop any train proceeding toward workers without a briefing. The AMF is required to brief train operators that there are roadway workers ahead, and that there may be multiple work crews, and that the train operator must operate at reduced speed and appropriately utilize the train's horn. As background, Metrorail recently adjusted some of these requirements for train operator actions following the AMF briefing. The new rule still requires reduced speed and other steps, including ensuring that each train is briefed by the AMF. Metrorail also plans to change the name of this position to AF, Advanced Flagger. Investigation Whiskey 0279 relates to a train that was not briefed by the AMF on January 12, 2023. This train was out of service and was being used by Rail Transportation Quality Control for training. The AMF did not properly set up their safety equipment, was not holding the required orange flag, was not standing at the required location, and did not flag down the train to stop as the train bypassed the station. The AMF then did not report this as an emergency as required by Metrorail procedure. The AMF simply radioed to the crew that a train was coming. After encountering the work crew, the quality control officer reported the improper roadway worker protection due to encountering the work crew without warning. In an investigative interview, the employee acting as an AMF said they did not report it as emergency because the train was not at full speed when passing the station. Metrorail rules require trains to slow to 25 miles per hour to bypass the station. The AMF said they expected the train to stop, so they were not prepared to use the flag to signal the train operator.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Key Rose on 290?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, please.
Just a comment. I know we're going through a couple of the AMF accidents, but this kind of indicates the weakness of the AMF process, where the advanced mobile flagger needs to be in position and stop the train and provide instructions in order to ensure the safety of track workers. And we've had a lot of accident investigation reports today that have to do with failure to protect these track workers. And if you read some of the reports, you have instances where track workers have to jump out of the way of trains to try to get to a safe spot on the wall. They hear trains coming too fast and try to get out of the way. And in my view, this advanced mobile flagger, whether they call them the AF or the AMF, is really a flawed system. And going back to our discussion about automatic train operation and new technology, I'm wondering why Metrorail can't invest in a system to actually impart a speed restriction on trains when they're entering these work zones. That's one of the main concepts of positive train control that's used in the freight railroads and passenger railroads. There is technology out there that's much simpler than positive train control that could potentially be adopted to make sure that trains entering these work zones enter at a speed that's reasonable for the workers on the track. If I were a track worker at Metrorail, I'd be scared to death if I have to always look behind me to see if a train's coming and be prepared to jump out of the way if someone's not following the requirements. But I think this is a prime area where Metrorail should invest in some technology to protect these workers before a tragedy happens.
Yep, that's hard to disagree with. I completely understand what you're saying and agree, and I'm not sure that we're adequately addressing it. So I'm gonna, after we're finished with these reports, I'm gonna ask you, Dr. Meyer, for some thoughts on how can we actually move the needle. I'm not convinced that these reports, which have shown things have gone wrong and have resulted in a lot of retraining, I'm not sure we've actually moved the needle. So think about that, and I'll come back to that after we're through with these reports.
And Chair Hart, let me just bring up one more thing to think about. I'm not sure which one of these reports it was, but one of the reports indicated that in March of this year, that Metrorail changed their procedures, and where trains were not allowed to pass roadway workers at more than 15 miles per hour. Now that's been changed to 35 miles per hour. And in the face of all these roadway worker accidents that we're seeing here and the roadway worker audit that we've done, I'm wondering, does anybody know how Metrorail justified increasing that speed from 15 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour for trains passing roadway workers? Does anybody have any information on that?
And I would add to that question, is that something that required our approval to go into effect? Apparently not, because apparently we didn't approve it. So I'm just curious about that too.
Chair Hart, to answer your last question first, there was no approval required. Well, I shouldn't say no approval required, but the WMSC not grant an approval, nor were we in the line of approving that change. However, we did raise the question of the 35 miles per hour being the new rule on the 1st of March. On the 1st of March, Metrorail converted the requirement to be 35 miles per hour as trains operated past roadway personnel. On that day, on March 1st, we received several concerns by roadway workers at Metro about the speed being increased. More importantly, that they weren't aware that the speed was going to be increased to this degree. We had asked Metrorail to provide an analysis about what prompted or what was the basis of conducting this change. We got several responses, but we are still in the midst of evaluating and providing further responses on this. This has not concluded.
Well, thank you for that. I'm a little bit surprised because my impression is that there's very little new things that they can bring into play without our permission, and I'm wondering how this happened. So I would like to get an answer on that.
Well, certainly, Metrorail has a very active rules committee that every week considers operating practices and operating rules that are changed. Each one of those does not require our permission to put into effect. That we would essentially be running Metrorail for them if it did. That said, there are times when we insert ourselves in the process, an example of which is the in-depth review aspect of safety certification, where our program standard does require our concurrence before a change, a fairly major change, can go into effect. This operating rule was not subject to that. That does not mean that we have no opportunity to review it or all of Metro Rail's safety practices with regard to RWP, and we absolutely do and will.
So in looking at the reports that were presented, and this is a longer list that was submitted to us earlier, I think. I looked at 15 different roadway worker accidents, and 6 or 7 of them involved speeding. And I just wanted to read from this is from one of the summaries. This is W283 excessive speed past workers. This is the testimony of the roadway worker in charge, and basically the roadway worker in charge reported that they were able to notice the train traveling at excessive speed and get against the wall before the train passed them. The roadway worker reported that the highway noise made it difficult to hear the train's horn. So here's an excessive speed train that's passing roadway workers where they have to scramble to get out of the way, and here, Metro Rail is saying, we're going to increase the speed from 15 to 35 miles per hour. So basically, what they're doing is they're taking all these violations for speeding and saying now they're okay. I mean, this doesn't make any sense, and I really think we need to look at what's going on over there, because this is a dangerous situation for those workers, and I can't imagine working in an environment like that where you always have to be looking over your shoulder to see what's coming.
Any other comments at this point, or should we move on to 291?
I'm just going to mention, I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and move on to 291, but in about 5 minutes, if we have not finished with the safety investigations, because I'm concerned that we may begin to start losing commissioners because this meeting is going a little longer than we anticipated. I'm going to ask in about 5 minutes, Chair Hart, if you will consider suspending the investigations agenda item and moving to the budget item, so that all of the commissioners currently present will have an opportunity to participate and vote on the budget. And then if there's more discussion or other activities to address on the safety investigation item, then with your permission, we could return to it after the budget is dispensed with.
That sounds like a suitable way to change the agenda at this point, because I'm basically not satisfied with the accident investigations reports that we've seen, and I want to have some more conversation about that. So that would work for me to suspend that for now.
Then let's with your permission, then perhaps we suspend now the discussion of safety investigations, and we move ahead in our plan and our agenda to discuss the budget item that is before you, and at that point call for a vote on that, and then we can return.
Okay, that works for me. Thank you for the suggestion. So let's move to.
This would be number 11 in the agenda, resolution and other actions.
Right.
And it would be for you to call on Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke to ask if she has any remarks to advance our fiscal year 2025 budget that covers the dates July 1st through June 30th, 2025.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll jump in
Secretary
here.
Farrar Dyke, do you have any remarks at this point?
Yes. Good afternoon. The Finance and Operations Committee reviewed the final budget and work program during our meeting on April 30th, and our committee recommends approval. This is the conclusion of a months-long process that included development and distribution of the draft work program and budget last fall, review, input and agreement from the jurisdictions. And the process now culminates in today's final approval vote. As the chair stated, the fiscal year 2025 budget covers July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. This work program and budget will continue to strengthen our organization next year and in the years to come, building on the significant work we already have underway. Mr. Angie, do you have anything else to add as the Chief Financial Officer?
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. The fiscal year 2025 work program and budget before you today totals $7,318,000. It will support our continued success in our safety oversight activities and fiscal management. The largest share of our budget is for salaries and benefits for our staff. This budget was completed following all provisions in the Master Funding Agreement in coordination with Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. As you noted, this work program and budget were submitted and reviewed by the Finance and Operations Committee, which recommends adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angie. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Angie? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025 work program and budget via resolution R-2024-04? Is there a motion?
I'll motion. So moved.
Okay. Commissioner Rouse, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Lobby, thank you for that. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is 5 yeas, 0 nays, and so therefore the 2025 budget is approved unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Let me now ask, is there any other business besides the possible return to the accident reports that the commissioners would like to address at this point? So, Dr. Meyer, let me ask you what your suggestion is regarding the accident reports that I'm basically feeling fundamentally unsatisfied at that in terms of whether we've moved the needle.
Sorry, let me ask you if you are unsatisfied with the quality and thoroughness of the investigations, or if you're unsatisfied with the oversight actions to bring Metro's RWP program to where it should be. Because, and I ask this because, to my mind, those are fundamentally different things. One of our functions is, of course, to ensure that adequate investigations are done and are adopted and reported publicly. And we have other processes by which we can effect our safety oversight, such as audits. As you know, we are very near about to transmit our RWP audit to Metro for its comments, and another aspect of our oversight program by which we bring about change and safety improvement is, of course, the CAPS, and CAPS will result from the findings that are in that draft audit report. So there are other tools that we have to bear, and of course, if CAPS aren't sufficient, we also have audits and other enforcement actions in our toolbox. So we have a multifaceted slate of tools here, and so understanding if you're unsatisfied with the thoroughness of these investigations, or if there's more you'd like to talk about on where our oversight should go with respect to improving safety at Metro.
Thank you for the question. It's not so much the thoroughness of the investigations as much as it is wondering whether we have ended the investigation with a recommendation that will help improve safety. And that's what I'm not seeing to my satisfaction.
And that, of course, is critically important in another agency that we both spent time in, where recommendations are pretty much the only product. Here, well beyond recommendations, we have actions that we can take. So my suggestion to the commissioners, but I fully recognize that you and other commissioners may feel differently, is that if you are satisfied with the thoroughness of the investigation and the extent to which they expose the issues that we need to work with, that we move past holding the investigations open, bring them to a close, but the staff then can take under advisement any comments you commissioners would wish to make with respect to our oversight program of RWP and where we should go with that program and any actions that we should take. And I see Commissioner Farrar-Dyke has a hand raised.
As well as Commissioner
My-
Con. Sorry, go ahead.
Just for my information, what is the recommended speed limit when passing a railway worker among the industry?
Boy, I think I don't know that I'd want to speak for the whole industry, but generally speaking, one walks a train, one moves slowly past workers.
Well, I was going to say,
It's not universal though.
Yeah, I mean, we can't speak for all the transit systems, but for FRA regulated properties, right? Every railroad's required to have an RWP program in place, and that kind of sets the situation in terms of what level of protection you need when you're working on the track. But generally, if there's somebody adjacent to the track that cannot get out of the clear zone, within like 25 feet or 20 feet, whatever it may be for that railway, you're required to go at restricted speed, which is half the distance of sight to be able to stop before they reach somebody who might be fouling the railway.
There is a variety in this though.
Okay, no range.
At New York City Transit, trains generally are brought to a complete stop and walked by workers. During our recent trip to MARTA in Atlanta, we see that trains are operated at ATO speeds past workers rather routinely. So that presents quite a range.
Commissioner Conklin also has this.
Yeah, I was going back to Dr. Meyer's initial statements here about the satisfaction with the investigations. I found them all to be thorough. I think they all point to failure to follow procedures, training, lack of position for the roadway worker in charge or the people flagging at ends of platforms. I think those are all valid findings from these investigations, and absent systemic change in how this issue is managed, those issues need to be addressed. And those procedures need to be followed more closely in all of these work situations. So I'm comfortable with the reports as they were presented, but I am completely sympathetic and in agreement with the notion that while those are all elements that contributed to these incidents, and they can individually be resolved through training and compliance with established procedures, it's pretty obvious that the training systemically isn't getting to the root of the issue and that the procedures are probably insufficient. So I would suggest we adopt the reports, but then, as you suggested, identify what additional recommendations may flow separately from the reports individually, but the body of evidence that the reports collectively demonstrate, to see what other actions make sense.
I can live with that. I was just not satisfied with stopping where we are. I want to continue with more, so I could live with that suggestion.
And to be clear, the staff are not satisfied with the current state, and this would not be surprising for anyone at Metro Rail. We are looking for significant safety improvement with respect to the RWP program, and so by if the commissioners choose to do this by adopting these reports, I assure you we will not lose sight of this critically important worker safety issue.
I feel the same way. I think the investigations are good. I think there's a lot of issues that have been flagged. I guess I'm more frustrated with the approach of just, we had one case where there was no advanced mobile flagger. He was on the escalator coming down, according to the station video. He wasn't in place, and therefore the workers that were in that tunnel did not get any protection. And, you can say, well, you got to be in position first. You got to confirm you're in position. But I think the guy said he was in position. He was on an escalator. I mean, this is what's really untenable for me about trying to put a Band-Aid on all these little issues of non-compliance with rules, people not being in the right place. It's all about human failure. And I think we need to start talking about about things to actually guarantee through redundancy, at least, that workers are safe. And it's not just about workers, it's about running red signals. It's about issuing information over the radio. It's a whole bunch of things. And I think that the message we send should not always be, okay, follow your procedures. It may also need to be, okay, you need to find a better way to do this because it's not working. And at some point, you got to say, you know, this system is flawed. You got to find a better way to do this. And there's other transit properties around the country. There's New York. There's San Francisco. There's Atlanta. There's Washington D.C. that have somewhat similar operations. There's international examples of automatic train operation and other things where these protections are built in. And, you know, we got a world-class city here, and I think we need a world-class transportation system. And part of that is spending some money to basically get the technology they need to provide, you know, a safe environment both for their workers and the passengers. And that right now, I don't see that map leading to a solution to those issues.
Yeah, I would concur there. I don't think it's the reports at issue. I think it's more of the dialogue that we're having today is highlighting some of those systemic issues where just continuing down the same path is not going to fix it, right? What do we need to do? We talked about certification of operators. We know they're working on that. That's something that should be a focus item to see if that's going to address some of the issues we've even talked about today. We talked about, you know, better use of technology. And issues like radio communication and how the permissions are established from dispatch, operating controls, whatever you want to call it, down to the operator. So there's some themes here that really have to set, I think, the next set of actions here going forward for focus areas in terms of are we moving the needle or not collectively, not us just here, but also WMATA. You know, we're seeing it with these reports. I don't know if they were intended to all be together, but you're seeing RWP, you're seeing operational issues with certification and lack of communication from those that are trying to get permissions down to those that are operating vehicles. So that's the bigger issue to me, is it's where are we headed? We're the ones that we collectively say we need to do better. This, whatever being done is not working. It's not effective. You can't procedure your way out of it.
And how many chances do you want to give them to do the right thing? I mean, you know, just pick a subject: training, certification. How many times have we revisited certification? We've been talking about roadway worker safety for years and years. Not prior to WMSC, even the board's been talking about roadway worker safety. Even our report talks about the 5 fatalities they had in 2 years. And, you know, how long does it take to learn these lessons? I think that we need to be in a position to you know, not just say that our audits need to look at what your policies and procedures are, but they also need to weigh in on whether or not these policies and procedures have any chance of ever being successful. And that's kind of my frustration after working both on the Washington Metro Board and working here with the Washington Metro Safety Commission.
So in that sense, I'm satisfied with the reports as far as they go. I'm not satisfied they go far enough. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Meyer, to, if we approve them as far as they are as far as they go, I'm going to ask you to think of a way to dig deeper into some of the systemic issues and see what we can do in a more significant way to actually make a difference and move the needle.
We have that message loud and clear, sir, I assure you.
With that assurance, I'm happy to take a vote on all of those accident reports.
Okay, so I just want to affirm with you clarification. Want to make sure the commissioners are aware there actually are a few more reports that you have not heard an oral presentation yet. They of course were included with the board book and I believe had opportunity for your prior review, but we have not presented again all information about every report now. That's not necessary. But if there is any report that you would like to discuss specifically before the vote, please let the chair know.
Well, I mean, we can go back to where we left that process and went to the budget approval and go through the rest of them if you'd like, and then include all of them in the vote together. I'm fine with that process.
That's not necessary. I believe
Not
that
necessary,
we
I
have
guess.
made
I'm
the
sorry, I
point
should have
more than
pointed.
adequately in terms of concern for safety in this regard at Metro Rail, as well as the need for staff to bring you some acceptable actions to address this. So I personally don't know that there is a need to go through the reports in detail. The legal requirement is that we make them public after you adopt them. You've had a chance to review them. If you're comfortable voting on them, we can then do our duty to make them public after you adopt them.
You know, I think we've talked a lot about all the safety issues. You know, from my perspective, you know, I'd just like to let staff finish their presentation and then maybe vote on the whole package. I don't expect that there's going to be too many more comments, if any, but I would like to know what we're voting on and you know, just hear the presentations.
So then if I could ask staff, with the chair's permission, to return to the presentations and move through them fairly expediently, that would be great.
Which number did we stop at?
Whiskey 0291.
Okay, let me scroll to that. Okay, who's got Whiskey 291? I haven't found it yet.
I can go ahead and start. Thank you, Chair Hart.
I found 290, so I'm close. Please go ahead, Ms. Key Rose.
Investigation Whiskey 0291 relates to an advanced mobile flagger incorrectly reporting that they were in position at Georgia Avenue Pentworth Station on May 24th, 2023. The AMF reported over the radio that they were in position when they were still entering the station platform. Based on this, the roadway worker in charge believed that AMF protection was in place. However, a train departed the station without the train operator being briefed. The train operator was not aware of the work crew ahead. The AMF said on the radio that a train was leaving the station, but did not report it as an emergency and did not report that they had not briefed the operator. After passing the work crew, the train operator reported that there was no AMF in place at Georgia Avenue Pentworth. The RIC said the crew climbed the catwalk for safety as the train passed because they heard the train approaching.
Not to slow us down, but I do find these instances of willful misrepresentation of your conformance with the protocols to be the most disturbing of all the incidents we talked about.
Yes, I agree with that. That's particularly troubling. I know that we don't get into specific measures on punishment of employees, but I am aware that we have shown a tendency to be very dissatisfied with intentional misrepresentation.
Yeah, well, I would add that it gets back to the process question that we talked about earlier, right? Is the process there to make sure that situations like that do not continue to be repeated?
And we can take as an IOU to ensure that we understand the resolution with regard to the specific AMF.
Okay, what's the next report?
I think that's right. All right, these 6 final investigation reports include trains being operated at excessive speed, approaching and passing roadway workers. Investigation Whiskey 287 involves a near miss of a fatality between Eisenhower Avenue and King Street stations. The train operator operating train 451 operated the train at up to 52 miles per hour, passing workers at approximately 47 miles per hour. The Metro Rail rule required the train to pass workers at no more than 15 miles per hour. The train operator also did not sound the horn. This near miss was not immediately reported. After reaching the Eisenhower Avenue station platform, the roadway worker in charge reported this near miss by phone. In an investigative interview, the RIC described the work crew reaching a place of safety just before the train passed. The RIC described feeling the wind and vibration coming and hearing the noise, and realizing the train was moving fast and the crew had to quickly get on the safety walk. Metrorail rules require mobile work crews to use a need versus speed chart to properly place watchman lookouts. This requires the placement of these watchman lookouts based on the maximum speed in an area, not based on the expected train speed, to provide the work crew with ample time and warning. Ample time means the crew reaching a place of safety at least 15 seconds before a train passes. This crew did not have ample time and warning. The train operator reported that after the crew relinquished foul time and the train operator departed from the platform where they were briefed by an AMF, they lost focus on the fact that there were still roadway workers ahead. Investigation, any questions on that? We're going to continue.
Any commissioners have any questions regarding that report? Okay, please continue.
Investigation Whiskey 283 relates to a Silver Line train operator operating past workers at excessive speed March 29th, 2023 between Spring Hill and Wheelie Reston East Station. The train operator properly sounded their horn following the AMF briefing, but operated at speeds up to 46 miles per hour. The train operator applied emergency braking as the train approached the work crew. The train operator did not report the emergency brake application as required or the near miss. The roadway worker in charge reported the near miss by phone to a rail traffic controller. The roadway worker in charge reported that the crew was able to notice the train traveling at excessive speed and get against a wall before the train passed them. Any questions?
Any questions from any of the commissioners regarding that report? What was the number of that one again?
That was 283, sir.
283, thank you.
285 relates to a train operator being observed by a rail transportation quality control officer operating at excessive speed, approaching and passing a work crew on April 17th, 2023. The quality control officer reported this excessive speed past roadway workers after it occurred. The train operator traveled at up to 46 miles per hour and remained above the required speed when passing workers. This event demonstrates the importance of Metrorail developing and implementing effective performance monitoring and other supervisory oversight programs that provide for internal oversight on a consistent, ongoing basis. We appreciate the quality control officer reporting this event. Any questions on 283?
Any questions from the commissioners on Whiskey 0285?
I'm sorry, 285. All right. 286 relates to a train operator operating past a work crew at excessive speed on April 23rd, 2023. The train operator improperly moved the train at up to 51 miles per hour. The train was moving approximately 37 miles per hour when the train operator applied brakes. This led to the train stopping at a train length beyond the roadway workers, so about 600 feet. Train operator then continued to Roslyn Station without reporting this near miss. The roadway worker in charge reported the safety event by phone. Any questions on 286? All right, we continue.
Hearing none.
Investigation Whiskey 284 relates to a train operator moving past a work crew at excessive speed and not sounding the train's horn. Vehicle data showed that the train was traveling 42 miles per hour as the train operator accelerated from Eastern Market Station, where the operator was briefed of the workers ahead. The train operator applied braking. The roadway worker in charge reported that the operator did not sound the horn, and they did not report the excessive speed. The train operator stated they had forgotten there was a work crew on the roadway. The train operator reported that they had raised concerns to a terminal supervisor about their fitness for duty prior to this trip. This related to a person being struck by a train that they had heard reported on the radio. This operator had been involved in a previous similar event. The terminal supervisor dispatched the train operator back into service after that train operator reported that they had decided to remain and continue their shift. Any questions on Whiskey 284? Okay. Investigation Whiskey 282 relates to a train operator passing workers at excessive speed near McPherson Square Station on March 10th, 2023. An automatic train control maintenance crew was conducting work in an interlocking with local signal control when they gave up their exclusive track occupancy by providing proceed signals. They did not have an advanced mobile flagger on the platform as required by Metro Rail rules. The train operator sounded the horn, then accelerated as they passed the work crew. The roadway worker in charge reported that excessive speed created strong wind pressure in the tunnel that impacted the crew. Vehicle data showed the train accelerated up to 39 miles per hour as it passed the work crew. Any questions on 282? Okay. Whiskey 290 relates to a rail supervisor picking up a sign from near the third rail without necessary electrical safety equipment and protection against electrocution. On May 23rd, 2023, the supervisor was dispatched by a rail traffic controller to retrieve a wet floor sign that had been blown onto the roadway at Georgia Avenue Petworth Station. CCTV shows that the sign was against or beneath the third rail. Metro Rail worker safety procedures require protective gloves and third rail power de-energization to remove the object with the potential for incidental contact with the third rail. The rail supervisor was not wearing electrical safety gloves and power remained energized. The rail supervisor was not injured. The WMSC appreciates the safety department's attention to identifying and investigating this safety event to reduce the risk of reoccurrence. Thank you. That completes Steve's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley and Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from the commissioners for either one of them regarding this series of reports we've just heard?
So Chair Hart, if my memory is correct, there was only one of these reports that had anything to do with an equipment defect, right? That was the derailer. The rest were policy procedures. Were there any other that were related to equipment defects, or is it just that one?
I'll defer to staff on that answer.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a defect with the derailer other than it wasn't painted properly. It was rules and procedures that weren't followed.
Okay, that's what I thought. So it doesn't appear that there's infrastructure related contribution to any of these events except for that one with the painting.
So let me ask does Ms. Key Rose, do you have some reports left to present?
Yeah, we do have two more. Did you want to finish those or?
Yeah, unless we have further questions on what we just heard, yes, I would like to proceed.
Sorry, I thought that was the end.
Oh,
Yeah, no further questions from me on the reports, but I think going through those last 6 reports, that pretty much sums up the problem. And again, I just want to point out that we have all these incidents where we have trains speeding past roadway workers, and we have roadway workers in at least 3 cases, diving out of the way to get to a position of safety because they hear a train coming. And yet we have a change in the rules from March 1st, 2024 to increase that required speed from 15 miles an hour to 35 miles per hour. And I believe in all cases, these trains still would have been in violation, but not as much as when the requirement was 15 miles an hour. So I think that's what's really bothering me is just this number of issues where we have speeding trains and really failure of the processes and procedures to protect the roadway workers.
I agree fully. So note to the staff to take that into consideration because as we go past this, we don't want to just be done with it. We need to do something about it.
Absolutely.
Now, we still have 2 reports. If I understand what's happened so far, we still have 2 reports from Ms. Key Rose. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can try to finish those up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Investigation Whiskey 0293 relates to an improper door operation at Archive Station on May 26, 2023. The train operator opened the doors on the non-platform side, then closed them. The train operator then opened the doors on the correct side. The train operator did not report this improper door operation as required and continued on without conducting the required ground walk around to ensure that no people or objects fell onto the roadway. An Office of Systems Maintenance automatic fare collection technician communicated the improper door operation to a rail supervisor at Gallery Place, Chinatown Station. The rail supervisor reported this to the control center. A rail traffic controller then asked the operator about the door operation at Archive Station, and the operator did not report any problems. The train operator was removed from service when the train reached Greenbelt Station. In an investigative interview, the train operator stated they mistakenly pressed the wrong button. The train operator stated they thought the doors did not actually open since they did not immediately hear from a rail traffic controller. Metrorail is implementing corrective action plans associated with the WMSC's rail operations audit issued in April 2022. Metrorail has committed to completing their CAP for finding one of the audit in October. This CAP addresses consistent supervisory oversight, effective training, safety promotion, and other elements Metrorail has committed to in its public transportation agency safety plan. Finally, investigation Whiskey 0294 relates to evacuation for life safety reasons of a Greenbelt rail yard, rail car service and inspection building. This was due to a gas leak from a shutoff valve on a gas meter. Employees pulled a manual fire alarm pull station to alert others to evacuate the building. The leak was repaired. Thank you. That completes today's investigation reports presentations.
Well, let me ask about the wrong side door. Is there no technological backup for that? I mean, all you have to do is push the wrong button and you've opened the wrong doors, or does it take more than that?
That's correct. Just pushing the wrong button. The procedure to alleviate that is to stick your head out the window before you push a button. So when you stick your head out the window, you're verifying you're going to push the button that's on that side of the train that's supposed to open on the platform side.
And did anyone, including Mr. Smith, have a comment on ADO in relation to it being a preventative?
No, thank you, David. I just was going to provide any answer on the ADO system if there was any question on that, but Natalie nailed it.
However, I think Ms. Quiroz's response indicated that during manual operations, it is a requirement that the platform be observed and the doors on either side of the train will open, if those push buttons are pressed. Under ADO, automatic door operations, are there any safety systems in place to prevent wrong side door operation?
Yeah, in the instance of automatic door operation, there's a code that's received by the train that tells it which side to open the doors on. So in that case, the automatic door operation would provide the correct door operation for the platform.
So there is a safety system in automatic door operation that's not in effect right now when manual door operation is in use. However, as we've described during several public meetings, Metro is working through restoring automatic door operation to the system and is well on its way to accomplishing that project.
That's correct.
How robust is the automatic door operation against wrong side doors? That's a quantitative question, a qualitative question, I mean, not quantitative.
The number of wrong side door operations is extremely small, either in manual or automatic operation, but it is much, much less, if not zero, in automatic door operation. How's that for a qualitative answer to a quantitative question?
Well, I'm ready to submit all of these to a vote with the caveat that we mentioned that staff will take a look at what can be done more systemically to really make a difference, as opposed to just retraining or, just punishing or retraining or whatever was done for the person who made the mistake. That, to me, that's not enough to try to keep it from happening again. And that's where I'm headed. That's where I want to go. And that's what I'd like to have as a caveat to our vote, that the staff will look at these with that in mind.
I move to accept the reports that were presented in today's meeting.
Okay, and just to be specific, that would be Whiskey 0272 through Whiskey 0294, all of those reports that we're talking about. And so motion accepted. Is there a second to that motion?
I mean, I'll second it. And everybody wants her.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. The motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
So Chair, the vote is 4 yeas, 0 nays. So the investigative reports are adopted as presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. I'm scrolling down to the end of the script. So is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address this afternoon?
You have addressed it all, sir.
Okay, hearing none, that completes our meeting for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all of their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metro Rail, which is, as you can see, a never-ending task, and which is not a criticism, just the reality of human-operated systems. And I would like to thank them for their presentations, in this meeting. I would also like to thank the commissioners for being so thoroughly engaged in the process in general and in this meeting in particular. And finally, I would like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We appreciate your joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. We expect to hold our next public meeting on June 11th, 2024. Is there any further business from any of the commissioners? Hearing no further business, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Bye-bye.